have Matt. Matt, there you are.
Howdy.
Great. Matt's going to be talking to us. This is really potentially one of the biggest topics of the day, which is the market update. This market, what this was going to be when we first started talking and what it is today is night and day. So help us, Matt, make some sense out of this and give us your thoughts.
Will do. Thanks, Jeff. I'm going into a market update here. So my name, some quick details, Matt Hagar. I'm the president of Intero Commercial East Bay. Intero East Bay is a pretty large brokerage. We're one of the 150 largest in the country out of about 150,000. We had nearly $2 billion in sales last year, and I am the president of the commercial division. We have a residential division as well. I have a master's in real estate from the University of San Diego, which is the #1 program of its kind in the country. I also have my CCIM designation, and I was recognized as one of 10 rising stars in commercial real estate in the world. So I'm going to go through this, give you kind of what we've been seeing in the market, and then maybe a few things that we'll hope to see in the future. This presentation, has been done weeks ago with some modifications to it, but I'm going to try to best, encapsulate what's going on with the coronavirus as well and wrap up with that topic because I know everyone wants to hear about it. So also before that, I'll be going through, the basic industrial, retail, office, multifamily, kind of give you my thoughts on that and try to reach into the crystal ball a little bit. So jumping right into it, the industrial in the East Bay here. So industrial got hit hard in the recession, a lot of vacancies, a lot of the service sectors got wiped out, jobs wiped out, and so there was a lot of available industrial. And as you can see here with the net absorption, 14, 15, 16, et cetera, there was a lot of absorption into the market, gobbling up, $2 million or 2 million square feet, per quarter of industrial space. And this was concurrent with Amazon and all the other big retailers as they expanded and grow, people got their disposable income back. It was, there was a lot of space to be taken. Not surprising, there's 12% rent increases in 2017, and that was one of the highest rent increases in industrial in the nation. And that was, again, led primarily by e-commerce, and the e-commerce fundamentals in the Bay Area are well above the national average. We have very high online spending. We have very strong disposable income, and that's reflected in kind of is outlined in the need for space. The Amazon effect, quote unquote, is alive and real in the Bay Area as it is elsewhere. They absorbed about 600,000 square feet in Livermore in September, and then they took another 700,000 square feet in Richmond in February, just last month. So that's 1.3 million square feet by Amazon alone in the last 6 months. And so again, no shortage. And as you can see, the curve, a lot of absorption coming, and then there's a little bit of a lull on the construction, which is the net deliveries. And so developers are scrambling to keep up. And now there's projected quite a few million square feet coming in 2021 and 22. And this is catching up with that absorption that's been happening. And so as we know, construction timelines can be in years, not weeks or months. And so that's reflected in that chart. Moving on to retail. Retail is an interesting class to me. As you can see, pretty stable, a lot less activity. You see we're down 200,000 square feet, 400,000, et cetera. Going back to the industrial real quick, talking 1 and 2 million square feet per quarter. So these are quarterly figures. So 10 times as much industrial activity as retail, but it's been stable. Retail's gotten a bad rap lately, which I'm going to talk about more. But here in the Bay Area, there's still really healthy retail fundamentals. And there's some new construction, but it's been pretty limited in this cycle as there just hasn't been a need for it. And a lot of the leases happening are smaller, around 3,200 square feet is the average. This blip here, one of the few major retail centers to come online in recent years is the Veranda, which was opened in Concord in October of 2017. And it's 375,000 square feet with about 50 retailers. Other than that, there hasn't been many large projects out there. Um, the large department stores are not absorbing space. Again, we'll talk about that. They're relinquishing space more, but grocery stores are expanding, and they're really the only major chain taking on large space, 30,000, 50,000 square feet. Experiential is all the rage. It's the up and coming filler of these spaces. Things like fitness are doing well, Orange Theory, Soul Cycle, etc. The higher end, high disposable income, very expensive monthly memberships, more kind of a exclusive club are doing very well. So the next slide, we're going to talk about online shopping. But first, I have a question for you all. You can put it in chat, or you can just kind of think about it in your head. What would you say is the percent of overall sales that are internet based, as far as online retailers and everything? I know there's a lot of talk in the news, retail's dying, malls are closing, etc. So take some guesses on that, and we'll discuss it next. So answer your question. 10 to 12% of overall shopping is done online. I have a feeling that that might be a low number based on what a lot of you might have guessed. As you can see, it has been steadily increasing, and it's not going to stop increasing anytime soon, but it is still just at 10%. And that means 90% is still conducted brick and mortar, old fashioned. Stores are dying, no doubt, some, but the ones that are not adapting are the ones that are dying. So those that are able to reinvent themselves are doing very well. Those that are unable to change with the times, think like a Sears, they're struggling big time, and they probably won't be around much longer.
The range of guesses was from 2% to 65%.
Quite the range. So, so annual store closures here, this further illustrates the point. As you can see, there has been an increase in closings in recent years, but there's also been some major retailers that have gone under and have kind of caused a huge shock to that. Toys R Us is a big one. Payless Shoe Source had over 4,000 stores alone. So there's some huge closings that have come in recent years. And then there's some other stores that are still around, but are hanging on. Macy's, Sears have both had a lot of closings, and they're struggling. And those are, American namestays that have been around for a very, very long time. But there are hanging on by a thread right now. Like I mentioned, they're being replaced. Experiential retail is all the rage right now. Think axe throwing, escape rooms, rock climbing, top golf, fitness, anywhere that people can go out, have a good time, hang out with their friends, have a beer or whatever. That is being replaced by going to a mall and, buying a sweatshirt or a pair of jeans, because it's just too easy to do that online. But the face-to-face, the human interaction is something that cannot be as easily replicated online. And so those types of things are booming. The malls are interesting. It's kind of the two stories here, because the prime ones are still doing exceptionally well. I think, your really nice Southern California malls, the outdoor, nice weather, high-end retail, doing exceptional, very well. The ones that are in the suburbs that kind of probably got overbuilt, maybe shouldn't have been built to begin with, not quite the same demographics. They're struggling big time. They're closing down, and they're going to either be major renovated or they're going to be totally demolished and converted. And they're going to do things like multifamily. We have a housing crisis I'm going to touch on shortly, assisted living, and other things like that. One of the true case studies for us is the Hilltop Mall in Richmond. It was bought by a developer a couple of years ago, and their long-term plan, they're spending a lot of money just giving the thing a makeover, but they're also going to add 2 hotels, creative office space, and about 3,500 residential units lining the perimeter of it. That's their long-term plan. And so they're totally reinventing that property. And it's not just a standalone mall anymore, because again, the fundamentals are just not supported to do that any longer. Moving into office space. Office space is pretty interesting, because generally speaking, office space is not doing fantastic as a country. It is not really expanding because people are working from home more. They're doing co-working and telecommuting, not going in every day, and people are getting more efficient with their office space. Things like this Zoom conference allow people to not have to sit 10 feet from their coworkers and get things done. So the square footage per employee has been coming down for quite some time. With that being said, we live in the Bay Area, and as everyone knows, we're heavily driven by tech. And tech is kind of an anomaly in this sector, as they are still building a ton of office space. And Silicon Valley and San Francisco right now have 15 million square feet under construction of office space alone.
That's
15
unbelievable.
square feet. That's number one and number two in the country as far as office space under construction. 80% of that space is already pre-leased predominantly to tech companies. So it's a lot of build to suit. They're not building it speculative. You know, they're building it for their client, for the tenant. They already have these arrangements ahead of time, and it's causing a huge boom, which again is somewhat unusual because it's not really happening anywhere else. Compare that 15 million to the East Bay, which has under 500,000 square feet of development. So the East Bay office is a stable market, but developers' attention has been focused on the other two. So what that has kind of caused and allowed to happen is a lot of tenants are getting pushed out of the peninsula and the city, and they are driving east because the rents are cheaper and it's easier for them to conduct business and make a profit. And their employees are closer because their employees can't afford to live in San Francisco or Silicon Valley. So everyone's moving east, and the big companies are aware of this, and they're basically following their employees and their housing. Blue Shield is an example of a large company that just recently moved their operations out of the city east. Moving into multifamily. So this one is definitely interesting. I'm sure there's a lot of knowledge on this subject. So I'll kind of go through some brief points here. It's the 7th consecutive year that we've had positive absorption in multifamily, which isn't exactly a good thing because that means we're, you know, leasing out more units than we're building. So the supply demand equation continues to get more and more messed up each year. In these 3 markets, we built just under 8,000 units in 2019, which is honestly kind of pathetic, and it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough to meet with demand. So demand, multifamily here, this chart does a really good job of kind of showing where we're at and how we're failing. So we need 180,000 new units each year just to maintain status quo, basically, to keep up with expanding households and immigration, and just to not go farther off kilter on the supply demand equation. We built last year in all of California 110,000 units. So just over half of what we need just to maintain balance. And what's even more depressing is that that's actually 7% decrease from 2018. So we're actually going in the wrong direction. Governor Newsom in 2018 came out with a bold proclamation that he wanted to build 3.5 million new units by 2025. So that's over 7 years, and that's 500,000 new units a year. We built 110 last year. So we're nowhere near that. And also since 1954, developers have constructed more than 300,000 units in a year only 2 times. 2 years since 1954 have they hit 300,000. So to say that we're going to do 500 is not likely. And even if it were to happen, it would require an immense infrastructure investment to ensure that the residents living in those new housing units didn't put a strain on local services, you know, a lot of infrastructure, transportation, sewer, etc. So
right, they gotta put it on the.
So this is another chart, just kind of further exemplifies where we're at. We are ranked 49th out of 50th on housing units per capita. So per 1,000 people in California, we only have 358 housing units. Again, second to dead last in the entire country. Just further illustrates we just do not have the units. We have severe supply deficits on new construction, and there's just too much government intervention and delays in construction, approvals, too many lawsuits. CEQA is a huge issue, and it's way too easy to delay a project for years. And then the NIMBYs, for those of you that aren't aware, that's the not in my backyards, the people that oppose any sort of development under basically any circumstance. And then, as you've probably seen as well, there's a number of new rent control bills that are coming all the time. One recently being passed last year. SB 50 was on the table to try to densify housing units near transportation, and that actually could have helped alleviate some of this, but it failed. So we just kind of seem to go the wrong direction. There's a lot of bills and stuff, and I could spend 10 hours talking about just those alone, but I'm not going to do that for interest of time. So the San Francisco policy here, this was a study done on ways to increase affordability, and to get units out there to the market. And the number one and number two were expedited completion of major developments and then streamlining local approval of housing. So the delays, the construction delays, and really a lot of the government intervention and all the different ways that a project can be blocked are a major, major problem. And they lead to longer lead times and just general issues in getting units done, getting them constructed, and getting them to market to help alleviate the supply constraints. So, okay. So the coronavirus and the impact on CRE. So Neil's going to do a 45-minute presentation here in a little bit on the coronavirus. I've seen his slides. They're excellent. And he's going to do a really good job presenting that. So I'm just going to touch briefly on a couple of things, and I'll let him elaborate further. But number one, the best piece of advice I could give is don't panic. I know these are uncertain times. No one's really quite sure what's going to happen out of all of this, but don't panic. Keep a level head. Stay logical, stay rational, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to come through on the other side, and those that are, staying sane are going to be best in position to capitalize on that. Some of the short-term effects that I see right now are a slowdown in purchases. Being a broker, there's definitely people that are pausing. Deals I have in escrow, I'm seeing extensions and delays, possibly cancellations, but we're not there yet. I think it'll just depend on how things go.
It's giving all the
And
slides, but
Dan, can you please mute everybody? Dan? Go ahead, Matt.
I also think there's going to be an uptick in refinancing. Rates are low and they keep getting lower. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks. I know the Fed's just slashed rates again, which is not directly correlated to mortgage rates, but there's definitely a potential for them to go even lower in the future. And I think that people might be hunkering down a little bit with the uncertainty. They want to lock up good debt for the long term and possibly weather a storm that may or may not be coming. Also, delays in construction and increased costs. A lot of products for construction come from China, and all the supply lines are either in jeopardy or slowed down or downright stopped. Building materials, lumber, steel, roof materials, etc. A lot of that comes from China. The ports are not receiving the shipments. And so there's going to be delays alone just on getting the stuff. And the stuff, when they do get it, is going to be more expensive. So that's going to have to be passed along. Some long-term effects. I think there's going to be an overall blip in the construction development cycle. Anyone that has a project they're thinking about building right now, if they haven't started, they're probably pausing. I don't think they're going to be moving forward. They're not going to be able to get the approvals they need right now anyways. And so they're going to be waiting. And as these projects can take 1, 2, 3 years or more to develop, this might not play itself out through the cycle until 2021, 22, or even 23. So that could have, a multi-year disastrous effect on the housing crisis that I talked about earlier. So we'll just have to wait and see kind of how that plays out. And then last, hate to be the one to throw this out here, but not sure where this is going to bring us. I'm definitely not a doom and gloom person, but I think that, the R word needs to be thrown out there as at least possible. We've had a very extended, long economic cycle and economic run, and a major event was probably needed to derail it. And this may or may not be that event. So it's too early to tell, way too early to tell, but we'll see, so keep an eye on everything. And again, don't panic. There will be opportunity. And kind of with that, I'll leave a quote from one of my favorite people here. And I think it's a very pertinent quote from Mr. Warren Buffett himself: and be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. So again, the panic, the hysteria, the toilet paper, and the grocery buying, don't be that person. Sit back and wait. I think there's going to be some great opportunities. There's going to be some great real estate buys coming. There's going to be some people that are in a bind and are going to have no choice but to sell. And there's going to be some great long-term purchases that could be made.
That's great. Oh, mitigation. You have more slide?
Just one more.
Go.
So mitigation. So there's a lot of strategies. And if you want to call or email, we can talk further on what would work for you particularly. But the single tenant net lease investments, I think, are a great opportunity in this situation. If you have properties that you have, California has had a big run up in appreciation over the last decade. you got a lot of chips on the table. It might be time to take some of those off. And I think that this is a great way to weather the storm. You have nationally recognized tenants. A lot of them are publicly held. Think, Starbucks, Walgreens, AutoZone, fast food like Burger King, Taco Bell, McDonald's, and they have 15-year terms and they're corporate guaranteed. So the only way that you wouldn't be getting rent from Starbucks is essentially if Starbucks goes bankrupt as a company, which most people would agree is pretty slim to none chance. So even a recession, they can weather that. They're absolute triple net typically. So they have either low or no maintenance. The tenant pays for all property tax, insurance, parking lot, roof, etc. And then they can be a great hedge against uncertainty. So if we are going into potential times and you don't want to ride that roller coaster, this is a great way to park your money, get 15-year plus term, corporate guaranteed tenant, and you know where your passive income is coming from each month. So if you want to talk about that or any other strategies, here's my contact info. You can reach me. You guys will all have the slides. Call me, email me anytime. I'm here. I don't mind talking to any of you. And with that, that would conclude the presentation.
Yeah, that's outstanding, Matt. Really, really a good overview. Love the positive conclusion there, and I agree with you. Now, do you do only sales, or do you do commercial leasing too?
I do both. I didn't talk a lot about my team, but I have an office here of about 10 brokers, and I run that group, and we have sales experts, we have leasing experts, we have hotels and hospitality, we've got office guys, we've got multifamily guys. So if it's not me necessarily that you would work with, we have someone exactly for that specific, skill or expertise you're looking for. So we can cover it all. We also do business sales. We have a business expert as well.
Yeah. The in your crystal ball prediction there, on one, we're all us investors are probably thinking about this. On one scenario that I've been thinking about is, let's assume that within, like you said, at the beginning of the year, we were all pretty optimistic this was going to be a strong year. If given this, one scenario could be that they do come up with that turning point, that vaccine or whatever, and all the shelter in place works and things slow down and all that, and it's still an election year, so Trump's going to do whatever he can do to make the economy look as good as possible. And so maybe one scenario is here that, look, in 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, we turn the corner and we kind of pick up where we left off with even more enthusiasm because we're coming out of that mini slump. I don't know. Who knows?
Exactly. I think the biggest factor is going to be just on how long this lasts. We're all in California on this 3-week shelter in place. So in 3 weeks, are we relatively starting to maybe come out of hibernation, or is it just 3 weeks, the beginning of, 6 months of shelter in place? I think we'll see. But like you said, President Trump is probably going to do whatever he can to pump up the economy until November, no matter what. And so I think just the duration of this is going to be the biggest factor, and that's what no one really quite knows yet.
The other great point that I really liked was your last slide, where mitigation, because us boomers are the biggest segment of the population, I think, still in terms of numbers, and for anybody who is in that group, I think that those types of investments, considering that as we get older we can't afford to take the risk, I think those are great. Those are great options, regardless of whether there's some external situation like a coronavirus to make people think about that. Those are those are great ideas.
Very, very popular strategy for me to sell property here in California, Bay Area, navigate that sale, and then 1031 exchange into a single tenant anywhere in the country. We've been doing it all over for clients. And so it's a great way to, like I said, kind of take your chips off the table. Right. If you don't want to ride that roller coaster again and, deal with what you did in 08, 09, et cetera.
Great idea. Great suggestion. Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Good job.
Thank you.